Do you know that several of the space missions, most notably the Apollo missions, were motivated by political ambitions in a space race? What if you were told that technological development and scientific research were not the driving factors behind the much-anticipated return to the moon after such a long time, but political rivalry and territorial conquest? NASA chief also confirmed this in a recent report. He said, "If China beats the US to the moon's surface, it may end up claiming it as its own territory. Besides, China has recently experienced enormous success and advancement in its space program. But come to think of it, are we spending billions of dollars on ambiguous political projects at the expense of humanity, amidst this ongoing economic recession?" Have you ever wondered why there was an abrupt end to the Apollo missions and why we haven't gone back to the moon ever since? The Apollo 11 moon landing in July 1969 was a huge feat of human endeavor, engineering, and science. It was a moment that the world had been waiting for, the first of its kind, the first time humans will be visiting the moon. Apollo 11 was followed by 6 further trips to the moon, 5 of which landed successfully, and altogether, 12 men walked on the lunar surface. But just a few years later, Apollo missions were canceled. It's been 50 years now and is still ongoing. But why did NASA stop going to the moon? Aside from the fact that the cost of getting to the moon was ironically astronomical, it was a political race, and as soon as the objective was completed, the mission had to end. While the US government was willing to put a lot of money into the Apollo missions when it was helpful to the space race, research and technological development were not the priority. Apollo 11 was a political statement amid the space race, and once it had been done, the necessity for more missions to the moon was gone. If you're talking about crewed missions to the moon, it's because Apollo was the only program in which the US was willing to waste practically any amount of money to defeat the Soviets. It's as simple as that. They threw on some science, but beating the Soviets was the main goal. After the Soviets abandoned their own efforts, NASA felt no need to complete all their moon missions. Basically, Kennedy got us enthused about going to the moon and winning the space race, so we gave NASA a lot of money to do so. Thereafter, with a few other related flights, Congress decided to invest the funds elsewhere, resulting in the cancellation of the final 3 scheduled Apollo moon landing missions, 18, 19, and 20. Building those gigantic rockets and fueling them, as well as all the other logistical pieces required to get a crew to the moon and back in one piece, turns out to be expensive. And the people in charge of the national purse have never been interested in paying the premium price multiple times since we've successfully executed their political aspirations, which is, the United States achieved the first successful moon landing. And one would have thought that would be all. Unfortunately not. Future plans to go back to the moon are also driven by competition. While the Apollo missions opened up the possibility for astronauts to live on the moon for a few days at a time, missions to the moon in the 21st century would focus more on the construction of lunar bases or satellites. To be sure that there are more cogent reasons to return to the moon, researchers using orbital spacecraft discovered frozen water on the lunar surface in 1990, showing that it was not bone dry as once thought. That water could reveal secrets of the solar system's history. So this sort of new scientific discovery resurrected the push to go back to the moon and explore. But the sort of science that motivated NASA directors is the least of the reasons behind the renewed push. Mind you, behind every scientific push, there's a political reason. Of what significance would the exploration be to humanity? Artemis is hugely expensive. It's projected to cost $93 billion by 2025. But so far, the costs are building up slowly enough. It's obvious that the rise of powerful private companies such as Elon Musk's SpaceX, based in Hawthorne, California, and his dream of colonizing Mars has brought new public enthusiasm for space exploration. Above it all, there's the looming influence of China. China has just completed the primary phase of its first space station and may attempt to land astronauts on the moon in the next few years. Alongside China's daunting objectives for the end of this decade, China had a breathtaking record for space missions in 2022, with over 50 rocket launches and an impeccable success rate. They concluded the year by successfully launching a Long March 3B carrier rocket from the Xichang Satellite Launch Center in southwest China's Sichuan province, sending an experimental satellite into preset orbit. The launch, the 53rd of the year, marks the first time that launch vehicles built by China Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation, CASC, have conducted more than 50 successful flights in a year, successfully launching more than 140 spacecraft into orbit. The achievement has built a solid platform for China to become a major global space force. Not only did the number of launches increase, but the invention and application of new generation launch vehicles grew by almost 27% in 2022. The construction of ultra-modern launch vehicles is now in full swing, ushering the Chinese Space Agency to new heights. They are, without a doubt, setting new standards. Last year, the construction of the China Space Station accelerated beyond expectations. They completed the first phase with 6 missions, 2 crewed missions, 2 cargo flights, and 2 extra-large module deliveries, all launched into space by Long March vehicles. The Wentian and Mengtian lab modules each weigh more than 20 tons, and the Tianzhou cargo vessel weighs more than 13 tons as well. In total, the 6 rocket flights have delivered almost 90 tons of payload to the space station. In addition to completing the space station in only 1.5 years, China also ventured into some other advanced space programs, such as the Gaofen Earth Observation Program used for agricultural, disaster, resource, and environmental monitoring, as well as the Beidou navigation satellite system, according to space analyst Song Zhangping. Undoubtedly, these great achievements show once again China's speed and precision, and more importantly, China's reliability to always deliver its plans. Ever since the launch of the country's crewed spaceflight program in 1992, China has been marching toward its set goals with unwavering determination, and that's what's led to its ongoing success. It's also incredible that China has done this on its own. According to a Beijing-based space analyst who asked to remain anonymous, he said it took 15 countries a decade and more than 30 missions to establish the International Space Station, ISS. Besides, several observers also highlighted that the construction of the China Space Station is an exceptional landmark within the global space industry. And it's expected to survive at least a decade in orbit, especially given that the aging International Space Station, ISS, could stop operations by the end of the decade and perhaps sooner than by 2024. Now the question is the moon real estate to be claimed by a country, or is it for all humanity? As much as this may sound funny, from all evidence, it's more of a real estate investment. The relationship between the United States and China is complicated and has gotten increasingly strained in recent years. The enmity between these two powerful countries can also be seen in issues involving outer space. No country has the legal right to claim territory in space. Over 132 countries, including the US and China, all signed the 1967 Outer Space Treaty, which clearly states that outer space, including the moon and other celestial bodies, belongs to no one. Logically, China's progress should not pose a threat to NASA. If they could build the ISS without objections from other countries' space agencies, why then do they feel threatened? NASA's chief tries to justify his position by citing Chinese actions and territorial claims in the South China Sea as an indicator of future lunar claims. Chinese space industry officials replied to these assertions by saying that their space missions are to advance technology, boost economic growth, and improve people's living conditions. To the more conservative members of the US Congress, sending astronauts to other worlds is yet another geopolitical statement. A not too obvious reason for the resumption of lunar space exploration is once again viewed as a space race. The launch of the Artemis I uncrewed mission on 16 November was the debut of a new era of human exploration. The program seems praiseworthy. The second Artemis mission, with astronauts on board, should travel around the moon no later than 2024. The third mission will land people on the moon, including the first woman and the first person of color. This will be a great achievement for NASA, albeit of what permanent significance will these be to humanity? Many would prefer NASA to forget deep space and spend more time and money on Earth, including space-based climate monitoring, and not on the space race, but on Earth-bound problems such as civil rights. Over to you, viewers. What are your thoughts on this? Feel free to share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.